Hello students and welcome back to Shri Gyan Mandir Vidyapeeth, wherein we are learning the subject of social science for standard 10. Students, we have already completed the explanation and understanding of chapter number 1 of history, that is heritage of India. Next we started with chapter number 8, natural resources, which happens to be the first chapter in geography. In that also we have completed 2 lectures. So let us take a quick recap before we go ahead with today's lecture, that is for lecture 3 for chapter number 8, natural resources. Let's take a quick recap of what we have learned so far. First thing is very important, we learned what is resources, the meaning of resource, meaning and definition. Resource, anything cannot be called a resource until and unless human beings do not make use of it with the help of his intelligence. And on the opposite side, the thing which we are using should have some capacity to be used, right? So whatever in the nature, whatever a human being uses with his tact, wisdom, intelligence, talent, skill, all of that, he makes use of the things available to him in the nature. He uses it for his own benefit, then and then only, then that thing becomes a resource. Then utility is the usability of that thing. That thing is useful to us if it has some usability. If it is no use to us, then it does not have any usability, and then that thing should have some capacity so that we can do work upon it and get whatever we are desiring. For example, soil is good if it is nutritious. If it is rocky soil, then it's of no good, right? And because nothing can grow from it. It should have that soft, clay, sandy, some structure in it, so that proper nutrients are available for the crop, and then only that soil is useful to us. Otherwise it is of no use. So it should have some utility, it should have some usability and capacity. Now resources, they are mainly divided into 3, the way we use it. First thing as food, next thing as raw material, and the third thing as energy. Food resources usually given to us by the plant kingdom. That means fruits, flowers are given to us by either trees or the crops that we take. Food we also get from the aquatic animals. We also get food from the domesticated animals. Same way, lots of forest produce. For example, honey is taken from the honeycomb that is made by insects. So we use multiple ways the resources as food resources. Same way, raw material, lots of industries are dependent on the nature for its raw material. For example, if we want iron, then we are dependent on the soil which has lots and lots of iron ore, rich in iron, the mineral. Same way, we are dependent on ocean for producing salt. So that is used, the seawater is used for producing salt. Salt is then used as one of the important ingredient in our food. Same way, the iron ore which is available is a raw material, which with the help of a process we refine it into iron. Then iron is as you know, is used in multiple ways. So resource acting as raw material, and last one is energy. Coal, petroleum, radioactive elements, for example uranium, we get all these things from nature and we use it to produce energy, heat energy, electrical energy, nuclear energy, whatever you say. So these resources are used as energy resource. That much we learned. Then we classified the resources based on ownership, reavailability and distribution. Right? Now what is ownership? It can belong to an individual, it can belong to a nation or it can belong to the whole world, that is global. For example, individual resource can be land, building, that we learn. National resources can be army, or the trading that we do, international trading that we do, that is national. Global resources which belong to whole of the world, all the nations, that's called global resources. Reavailability depends on how much is available, how much it can make new. So we divide that reavailability into two: renewable and non-renewable. We know renewable, non-renewable, exhaustible, non-exhaustible, both the things are same. Renewable is non-exhaustible and non-renewable is exhaustible, right? So renewable, which can make new, for example, solar energy. When the day rises in the morning, when the sun rises in the morning, when the day comes, automatically the process of the solar machine starts and we have electricity or we have heat energy, right? So it is renewed on a daily basis. Yes, same way, the oxygen is depleted because we breathe in, we take out carbon dioxide, but that is recycled by the trees, and because of the trees, oxygen is renewable. Same way, the crop we renew every year, that means we make new and production is there. Same way, animals, birds, all of them, they are considered under renewable because they can reproduce. Now what is non-renewable? Non-renewable is exhaustible. For example, all the minerals, we dug out the mineral ore, then through a process we refine it, get metal, and we use that metal. But once we make use of it, it is over. Once the whole stock is over, it cannot be renewed by us. Yes, it has exhausted. The earth can make it again in say a few million years, but that's quite a long time. So in the near future, it is simply not available to us. So that is non-renewable or exhaustible. Next, upon the distribution, yes, distribution area. It can be universal, general, rare and solitary. Universal, it's universal, right? Then generally available resources. For example, land, each and every country generally owns land. So that is, it can be individual or it can belong to nation, but generally land is available. Rare resources, they are available at select places and that too in very less quantity. So they are called rare resources. Solitary happens at only one or two places on the earth. Other than that, there is no other place that has it. So it is solitary. All alone, it is available at one place only. So these are the things that we learned. Like next topic that we started was planning and conservation. Now if we are talking about renewable or non-renewable energy, then non-renewable energy will have to talk first, not about renewable energy, because that can be renewed. So we are not talking about that right now. We are talking about the exhaustible or non-renewable resources. Whatever resources we have, if we do not plan it properly, then those resources, if we continue using haphazardly, then what happens is within a very short time in the future, the stock or the reserve will be exhausted and we will have no more. Now that will pose a problem because our development is continuously happening, and because the resources have exhausted or complete or over, the development process will stop. In order to continue the development process for a long time, we need to give a thought on how we are using the resources. We have to control ourselves upon how we are using those resources. Then comes the question of conservation. It is available to us right now, so what do? We continue using it at an uncontrollable way, in an uncontrollable way, and what happens is within no time, even in the future, it will be over. So whatever we are having, we enjoy it, we do the development, right, and we enjoy the development. Do we think about the future? No, the future generation also has a right to it. We exhaust it, we complete it, and then what is going to happen to the future generation? They will never be able to see those resources, they will never be able to enjoy those resources, and the most important thing, their development in the future will stop because we used up all the resources. So planning should be there, conservation should be there. Next topic we learnt is steps to conserve resources. In that, let us begin with that for today's lecture. Coal, for example, coal in Jharkhand this much is available, plus in Bihar this much is available, plus in Bengal this much is available, plus in Orissa this much is available. Total, we know the stock. Yes, in mathematics we have learnt about the volume. Yes, length into breadth into height. Here we have to take length into breadth into depth because coal is found under the ground. We have assessed that we have this much area where underground coal is there. Under the ground coal is there. So we took the measurement and we came to a calculation that this much is the total reserve that we are having in this place, this place, this place. Put together we have the total for India, all the states plus whatever they are having. Total this much reserved, whatever million metric ton it might be having, this much is the total coal which is still under the ground, which we have not taken out. It is still available. Now this next step, so this was the first step, this is the second step. In second step what we have to do is we have to calculate our consumption. What India on a whole, what is the consumption? How much coal is consumed every year? So we know that because we take it out from the ground and then that is sold. So we know what we have taken out of the ground and we know what is the consumption. So we come to a conclusion that every year this much is the consumption. We have this much total reserve of coal, out of that this much is consumed every year. So we know that this remaining coal will last us for 50 years. If we continue using in this way, if we continue using in this way, that means this much consumption, the shaded area, that is the 1 year consumption. If we continue using this year, in the next 50 years we will completely exhaust coal. Right? Now 50 years your generation is still going to continue, you will enjoy all the development process, you will enjoy the progress because coal is available to us. What happens after 50 years? That is planning and conservation. These are the steps. Now which are the steps? That will come in the third one. Now we are using coal. One year consumption. In which way can we reduce the consumption of coal? We can use the alternatives. What are the alternatives? Where is coal used maximum? Coal is used maximum for burning, producing heat. Right? Now, where? For example, furnaces. Give them natural gas. Compressed natural gas. Give them CNG. If CNG is used, then coal consumption of coal will be reduced. We use coal in the thermal plant to produce electricity. We'll use alternatives of there. For example, we can make or we can construct lots of multi-purpose project, that is dams, where water will be collected. That water can be allowed to drop on the turbines to generate electricity. Then if electricity is produced, then we will need less coal because we are now using the hydroelectricity way of producing electricity. We are using hydel power instead of coal. So we can use hydel power. We can use hydel power. Same way, coal was heated so that we can cook food Instead of that, give them LPG, that is liquefied petroleum gas, or alternate we can give them solar energy, right, solar cooker, etc., so that less coal will be burned. Now what happens, because we started using these other methods of getting energy, there will be less consumption of coal. So what happens, here instead of 50 years, now the consumption of coal has come down. So what happens, instead of these 50 years, now it can go for 60 to 70 years. We will still be having coals. The next generation will be having lots of coal because we found an alternative for that resource. It is not only about coal. We cut down trees because we need to make furniture, right? So for making furniture, if we stop making use of wood, already wood for burning is already stopped. Now people do not use that much of wood for burning, right? So they do not cut down the trees for making firewood, because now they have lots of alternatives. Coal is there, and CNG is there, LPG is there, hydropower is there, solar power is there. So we do not have that much use of firewood. So already consumption has come down. Next we need for furniture. Instead we can make plastic furniture, that is also nowadays in use, so that less and less of wood. Find replacement of the sources which are depleting, so that we can preserve them, we can conserve them for the later generation. So in this way, planning and conservation alone will not have, but we should have a proper planning how to conserve, steps to conserve the resources that we have. Because if we don't stop the way we are using the resources now, then one fine day these are exhaustible resources and they will get depleted, they will slowly get depleted, and one fine day whatever total we had, we have exhausted it, we have completed it, we have used it up all, and our development process will hamper, plus the future generations, their development also will stop. So next is the resources which are limited or non-renewable should be exploited. Very good very good point is given over here. It should be exploited scientifically. It should be exploited scientifically means the best way to use it. Good machines should be used. For example, we cut down a tree to take the wood, or say for timber, whatever purpose. We should make maximum use of it in a scientific way. Yes, we should have machines, they will scrap the outside of the trunk in such a neat way that we can make maximum use of the trunk of the tree. Same way, the iron ore that we are using, if we use the old and traditional way, there will be lots of wastage. If we use the new and scientific way, we can have more iron from that same iron ore that we used to have, say, 50 years or 100 years back. 50 years, 100 years back, we did not have that much scientific attitude towards it. We did not have that much scientific approach. So what happens is, more wastage is done if the resources are not exploited scientifically. So the very first thing is to use the resources in a scientific way so that we can make the best use with lesser resources, and should be used only where it is necessary. This is second important point. Wherever a replacement can be done, we should replace it. For example, in the earlier days when houses were constructed, we used to have that wooden boxes as switchboards. There was a whole big wooden box, yes, where switches were there. We have replaced that with plastic switches and plastic switchboards, so that now we do not have use of wood, we have replaced it. So wherever possible, we should cut down the use of it, find a replacement. If it has to be used, then certainly yes, but only where it is necessary to use them. Attempts should be made to develop those resources, the quantity of which can be increased. We should try to develop those resources, the quantity is known. For example, it is known that in India we have maximum insolation because we are near the equator, right? So those resources, solar resources, should be developed so that we can capture the maximum insolation that we have, and we can convert it into either heat energy or electrical energy, so that we stop using, first of all the energy that is made with the help of non-renewable resources. For example, we can slow down or we can cut down the usage of coal for producing electricity because we are producing it by solar. Same way, nuclear, that is uranium, thorium we use, that is also natural resources which we do not have in plenty. So we have to find out alternatives. Attempt should be made to develop those resources. So why not develop maximum solar energy, maximum hydel electricity, so that it can be developed, more of that can be used, so that we do not have to use non-renewable sources. The resources which are cheaper or easily available should not be wasted, but instead they should be used sparingly for future use. Yes, this is not a suggestion. Mind you people, this is not a suggestion. This is our mentality. If we have too much of something, anything, if we have too much of something, we start wasting it. For example, you just need one fair book. You ask your father to bring one notebook for you. Yes, father forgot and he didn't remember how many notebooks you had asked for, so he brings 10. Now you wanted one, you have 10. So what will you do? You will use one, 2 maybe, 3 maybe, and rest of the 7 you will be using to make aeroplanes, you will be using to make drawings. So whichever resources are available to us very easily, it is human tendency to use little and waste a lot, right? But we forget that those resources are available to us easily now. What about 50 years later? What about 100 years later? If we use it and waste it in this way, after 100 years, 50 years, we won't be having that much of it. Yes, that is how whole of the earth was covered with forest. Now that is dwindling and depleting like anything. Now whichever country you ask, what is your forest cover? Then they should have, according to international laws, each and every country should have 33% of its land as forest. Do we have it now? No. Why? Because wood is available in the forest in plenty and we keep on using it, because it is available cheap and it is available easily, so it is wasted. Right? A very important thing to keep in mind, resources which are cheaper and are easily available should not be wasted, but should be used sparingly when necessary. Sparingly, very less, but it also means very less, right? So that the same quantity is available later. Those resources which are in limited quantity should be conserved. For example, all the ores, etc., they are available in limited quantity. Then they should be used less. Alternatives of it should be found. Finding its alternate option through technical development is favorable in long term. This we have discussed, right? You have to find alternatives for it. For example, we do it on a regular basis, day-to-day basis we do it. Yes, we use scooters, bikes, using petrol. At the same time, we have bikes and scooters which run on batteries. In that way, the people who are using battery operated scooters and bikes, they are saving that petrol. Yes, we are not using it. It takes hardly quite a small quantity of electricity to recharge those batteries, and it will serve the purpose. But they are saving lots and lots of petroleum. So finding its alternate option through technical development, that is favorable in the long run, because after in the long run, if a person is using e-bike or e-scooter for 10 years, just imagine how much petrol he is going to save. He is going to use electricity, but that is nothing compared to the petroleum, right? Necessary laws should be made. Yes, this is a very, very important point. Necessary laws should be formed for conservation of resources and should be enforced strictly. Necessary laws should be in place so that it does not allow people to harm those resources. If we are taking the case of forests, forests provide us with wood. Yes, people want wood, but then we should cover that green patch that we are having. It is very necessary because lots of wild animals, wildlife, it lives over there, right? And that is necessary. Forests are considered as lungs of earth, right? Forests should be there. Now, the forests are depleting because people are cutting down the trees haphazardly. Then law should be there. That means we will learn further in the next chapter. Here we are going to learn about the sanctuaries, the national parks, the bioreserves. The government has started bordering out the forest, is making up boundaries and using manpower over there to guard, protect the forest, so that people cannot just go inside and cut down the trees. Then that is breaking the law, because law is made where it bans people from cutting down the trees. If a law is there, then people who default the law can be caught, booked, and punishments can be given to them, so that it sets an example to the rest of the people that we just can't go in and cut down the trees. Yes, because that is a very important resource for us, right? So necessary laws should be formed for the conservation of resources and should be enforced very strictly. Laws are made in our constitution. We have proper arrangement for that for all the resources that we have, for all the heritage that we have, the government as per necessity should make laws and try to protect both of them, heritage also and the resources also, right? So in that way, because that is also part of the heritage that we have. Forests were there, so we have it today. Minerals, the people who came earlier to us, yes, they did not make that much use of the minerals, so we have plenty of them now. So most of the minerals which are under the ground, they fall under the protection of the government. They belong to the government, so that they can make laws for it and they can protect and they can take out only that much which is absolutely necessary. So it is used in a controlled way. So conservation of resources. On the other part, the government cannot reach all the places. It becomes, if we are living in this country, some of the duty falls on us also as citizens. So citizens also should be well acquainted with the facts associated with the rational usage of resources, and a public awareness should be cultivated. Now that can happen with the help of education, and education also to the children, because they are the future coming up generation, right? So if proper education is given to them that these are our resources, it is our duty to protect them, use it scientifically, and we should make the children aware, and that is why it should be in the curriculum for them, so that right from the beginning, right from the childhood, they become aware that if we keep on using it like that, when we grow up, at that time also it will be exhausted, we also might not be having it. So citizens, they should be made aware, and that is the work of the government. Plus it is the work of us, that is citizens also, should be well acquainted with the facts associated with rational usage. What is rational usage? Having some reason and logic. That means we should not waste the resources that we have. That is why even at home, yes, just try to leave the room without switching off the fan, the mother is going to shout like anything. Yes, why? Two resources are used over there. One, the fan keeps on using the electricity, so electricity is also used, which is a resource, and if more electricity is used, that will make a big hole in the family's budget, right? So two resources, very rich resources, money and electricity itself, are wasted. So it is our duty, citizen. That is why also when you come to school, yes, you have ever standing rule: whenever you leave the classroom, you should switch off all the fans and tube lights and the ACs. It is for this reason. When you are not using it, you got to switch it off. Again, when you come back after half an hour, 1 hour, you are free to use it, because that is necessary. So whatever is necessary, use them. But when it is not necessary, then please do not use it, so that it can be preserved. Now we come to the next very important topic, and that is soil formation, because we are talking about natural resources. Now natural resources, basically the first thing that we are going to talk is soil, because soil gives us agriculture. Soil gives us the very much needed minerals, right? So we should be aware of that. Soil formation, because soil is absolutely necessary. We need land to live on. We need a house to live in, but we need land to live on. To make the house, we need land, right? And what about food? Food we get from agriculture. So it is very necessary that where do we grow plants? We grow plants on the earth, on the top surface of the earth, that is soil. So let us learn first thing about soil formation. For that, we should first know what is soil. So the very first underlined thing, that is sentence, that is, put a star mark over there. This is the definition of soil. Yes, many definitions are given for the soil, right? We'll learn that. The part of the surface of the earth wherein the vegetation grows, that much part is known as soil, till the roots can go, penetrate. Because we know, if we start digging, after digging for continuously for quite a depth, we come upon big stones which we cannot penetrate. That means that is the end of soil. The top part which allows the vegetation to grow. If you take out snap out a wheat plant or a rice plant which is fully grown, you just try to pull it out from the earth, it won't resist much, because the roots don't go too much deep. The roots are hardly this much going deep in the soil. Whereas if you see a tree, the roots go quite deep. Yes, they are quite big, thick, fat roots, right? They go deep, but how much? They don't go that much deep also, right? So the top part, surface of the earth wherein vegetation grows, that is known as soil. This is the basic understanding of the definition of soil. The soil, now which is, this is also another definition. This is yet another understanding of what soil is, right? Soil is a thin layer composed of various elements on the surface of the earth. Now let us understand it. Now let us understand that. You have already understood this in the previous standard. We'll just let us go through it. Now this is the core, the center part of the earth. Out of that, just on the outer side of it, we have two parts where this is the outer mantle and this is the inner mantle. Outer and inner mantle. Outside that we have crust. Crust is the outermost part of the earth on which we are living. Now, on this earth, only this much is soil. Only this much is soil, right? That is the meaning. On the outer surface of the earth, only a small part is soil, which is made up of lots lots of material. It can be organic, it can be inorganic. That means it can be living, it can be non-living. It can be non-living or it can be dead also. That is the meaning. The soil is a thin layer composed, it has very thin layer. If that blows away, for example, you have learnt it in the previous layer standards also, that wind and water, it takes away the topsoil. If the topsoil is taken away by wind and water, then the plants find it difficult to grow because the nutritious part of the soil has gone away, right? So the soil, that's a very, very thin layer or composed of various elements on the surface of the earth. Now, which are these various elements? It can be small pieces of rocks. At the same time, it might be small pieces of the dead and decayed plants, animals, etc. That forms the humus. The soil is a natural mixture. If you want to explain it in a better way, in a scientific way, then soil is a natural mixture of two things. One is minerals and second one is biotic elements. Minerals, that is non-living thing. Yes, it can have iron, it can have potash, it can have magnesium. It will have lots of nutrients. Most of these nutrients, they are minerals. They are non-living thing. Along with the non-living, they will have also biotic elements. Trees are there. The twigs and the leaves keep on dropping from the trees and they remain on the ground. Then they slowly mix up with the ground. They are eaten away by the microorganisms and turned into very small bits, and they mix up with the soil. And these are the biotic, because they were living, so they are called biotic organisms. So soil is a natural mixture. You cannot separate it. It is inseparable. You cannot say, okay, these are the minerals and these are the biotic elements. It gets mixed up so well that it's a very fine mixture. It's also a very natural mixture of minerals and biotic elements which have the capacity to. Now, it has living also, it has non-living also. In other words, it has organic and it has inorganic. So we will tell that biotic elements, right? Organic one will take biotic elements which are already dead, but they were living at one point in time. And minerals are also there. Both of them together, they have the capacity to allow the growth of vegetation. That can be called soil. Yes, rocky parts are there. You throw leaves over there, you throw dead animals over there, these two things will never mix. It cannot produce soil which can allow the growth of plants, right? Because both of them are not a very good mixture. It is not a natural mixture, right? So the soil is a natural mixture of minerals and biotic elements which has the capacity to grow and develop vegetation. So you see, the farmer working in the field, he works in the field, soil, the natural elements are already there. Minerals are already there. He adds manure to it, which is biotic element, and it mixes so well and it helps in the plants or the crops to develop, because all the necessary nutrients are available in the soil. Minerals and biotic, both of them are present over there. So that soil is very good for the growth and development of vegetation. Now we'll learn about soil formation. Yes, how is soil formed? How is the soil formed? Now this also, I think we have learned a little bit in the previous standards, so it will be quite easy for us to understand. Now, if this is the surface of the earth, this is where we live, right? Now, if you keep digging over here, first you will find some soft soil. As you grow deeper, the hardness of the soil will keep on increasing. Yes, it will become more tight. Yes, it will be difficult to dig over there. Yes, at a certain point in time, you come upon big pieces of rocks. These pieces of rocks, they are called the parental rock. What are they called? This is just a process. It's not given in the textbook or the material. Yes, this is just simply a revision of what we have learned in the earlier standards. Now, because of the movement, continuous movement of the earth, these rocks, they keep on rising towards the surface. So, we have another scenario where this is where we are living, and now the rocks are over here. The same rock, slowly, after a number of years, it has climbed to the surface of the or it becomes exposed, in whichever way. When it is exposed, the wind and water, rain and other factors of erosion, they will continuously hit the rock and take off bits and pieces of that rock, which are called sediments. Yes, now these sediments, they will start getting collected somewhere over here, and they are all small, very small pieces of rocks. Yes, but eventually it is a part of that rock, so it will have some mineral in it. Yes, now this is what makes soil. Those small sediments of the big pieces of rocks which have come off the rock, yes, been taken off the rock by the factors of erosion, that is wind and water, they start accumulating at a place. Biotic elements get mixed with it, and this is how soil is formed. The parental rock, it lies below the soil. Soil is formed due to the material available through the denudation or breaking up of the rock. The rock piece comes on the top, it is exposed outside, so wind and water factors of erosion will start working it. Wind with high speed will hit the rock, a small piece, a very small microscopic part of the soil may come off because of that force, but that is a part of sediment, right? So denudation, it will take 100 years, it will take 1000 years for that big piece of rock to become smaller, but then it has given off lots of sediments which have fallen somewhere nearby and has become part of the soil. So what is the soil formation? This is important because the parental rock which lie below the soil is formed due to the material available from the denudation or breaking up of that rock. Now, what helps that breaking up? Lots of different ways are there for erosion or breaking up. What are they? First is natural factors like temperature. Now, we know during the summer months, we experience lots of high temperature. That high temperature will fall on the, that will affect the rock also, because rock also will get heated up and it will expand a little bit. At night, the temperature becomes cool, it will contract. Continuous expansion and contraction will break up rock. It will make a small crack. That crack will widen, keep on widening, and it will break the rock. Same way, there will be lots of cracks in the rock time to time, and slowly that big piece of rock which was exposed now is broken up into small parts. So natural factors like temperature, climate, yes, lots of heat, lots of cold, lots of water, lots of rain, lots of snow. These are the different climatic conditions that we have. They all result in denudation or breaking up of the rock. Denudation is called. Vegetation also helps breaking up the rocks, because tree, If a big banyan tree, peepal tree, neem tree, if the tree is so big, just imagine how big will be the roots under it. Those roots, they grab the rock and they crunch the rock into small, small pieces. They find small, small cracks to go in and find the minerals. So those roots, they develop in the cracks, they widen the cracks, and ultimately those stones are going to break up. So vegetation, very, very important factor for denudation of rocks. Topography, the top shape, yes, it can be a mountain, it can be a valley, it can be a low-lying area. Everywhere, wind and water keeps flowing from one direction to another direction. Wind and water, both are important factors of denudation. Time. One rock, it takes 20 years to break. Another rock, it takes 200 years to break. But time is a very important factor where denudation happens. All of that result in all of these factors. Because of all these factors, denudation of the flat portion of the rocks happens and it breaks up into smaller parts. Factors of denudation prepare very thin. Because of all this denudation, breaking up of the rock, small fragment of stones, they keep mixing with the ground, and after a long time we have those sediments, those very thin, very small layer through the denudation of rocks. From rocks we have soil, right? Now the biotic elements will enter. The humus formed due to disintegration or decay of vegetation or insects is added to this. Animals, they die on the ground. Microorganism, when the body starts decaying, birds, animals, insects, leaves, trees, plants, all of that die and they fall on the ground. After some time, they'll start decaying. The microorganisms work on it and again divide it into their basic forms. So this biotic element is added to the thin layer through the denudation of rocks. It is already in small pieces in sediments, and the biotic elements also are in sedimentic form. So both of them get mixed so well, it becomes a natural mixture. And the humus, what is humus? The dead and the decaying part becomes the humus. It forms a very fertile, because those are the ingredients which are needed for the growth of the vegetation, right? Biotic elements plus minerals available from the rocks. So the humus that is formed due to the disintegration of the decay of the vegetation or insects is added to this. This biotic elements play an important role in the development of the, now it is already dead, but when it was living, it had all those components, right? So when it becomes dead, it breaks up into small parts, and again it is in a ready condition to be absorbed by the living plant or a living tree. Yes, it's already ready-made. So these biotic elements, they play a very important role in the development of the vegetation. All this form a layer over the crust. Over the crust, a small, very small layer starts building up, which we call soil. That is the only part where the vegetation will grow. That we call soil. So whole of this was the formation of soil. Soils are classified. Now we have soil. Now everywhere we see different color of soil. Different color basically depends on the parental rock. If the parental rock is brown colored, then the soil on top of it will be brown. If the parental rock is black in color, we will have that color on the top. The soil will be black. Same way, there is red soil also. So wherever the bedrock or the parental rock is red, the top soil will be of red color. So soils are then classified according to few things. Which are they? This is point number one. They are classified on their color. So black soil, red soil. Climate. What is the climate over there? It is completely dry, or is it too rainy, less rainy, or lots of insolation, less insolation? The third thing we classify is on parental rock, because the rocks will have structure, right? So based on that structure, the same structure you will find in the soil. The structure of it, humus, etc. So these are the ways, different ways in which we classify the rocks, soil. Now we come to the most important part of formation of soil, that types of soil. Soil is classified on the basis of color, climate, parental rock structure, humus we just learnt. Recently, कैपिटल कर देना नहीं होगा तो, इंडियन काउंसिल ऑफ एग्रीकल्चरल रिसर्च ICAR, ICAR. What is ICAR? Indian Council of Agricultural Research, that is ICAR, has divided, that is the official authority, that is an official authority of Government of India. In India, the types of soil that are classified, are that classification is given by ICAR, that has divided the soils of India into 8 types. There are 8 types of soil available in India. Although it is international, but then you should have an agency or authority to stamp it, right? So ICAR, or Indian Council of Agricultural Research, has divided soils of India. How many types of soils are there in India? 8 types. Now let us see which are they. Alluvial soil, that you have learned in the lower standards also. Red soil. Third one is black soil. The fourth one is laterite soil. The fifth one is desert soil. The sixth one is mountain soil. The seventh one is forest soil. And the eighth one is marshy or peaty soil. These are the 8 types of soils available in India. Apart from there, a 9th one does not exist, because this is an official authority which has declared that India has these major types. It will be scattered, right? But these are the 8 major types of soil available in India, right? So they are 8: alluvial, red, black, laterite, desert, mountain, forest, marshy or peaty soil. Yes, these are the 8 types of soil available in India. Students, will stop over here for the day. Thank you, students.